All right, so I want to welcome everybody in for Breathwork 101. My name is Addie, and I will be your Breathwork facilitator. So I have to first go ahead and just start by saying, number one, I have a little bit of a cold. I'm congested, and I'm cracking up laughing because I'm like, oh, how perfect the timing to do our first breathwork class. And here I am hoping not to take for granted this very fact of breath and being able to breathe. One of the things that's really interesting too is just that, we take for granted our breath oftentimes. And it's usually at times like this where your nasal passages might be constricted, where it's like, okay, I actually can't breathe. And when you can't breathe, uh, it's when you start to notice, wow, all of the times that maybe you've taken for granted this very fact of being able to breathe and being able to breathe well. So, anyways, needless to say, I want to welcome you guys and we're going to get started. And so for today, we're just going to be doing a breath technique called breath awareness. This is a simple technique. Typically, we will meet here on Sundays for 1 hour from 11 to 12, taking some time to do a mini breath session as well as a body scan and a check-in. And then we will continue the class or finish the class with a journal prompt or a journal entry or some way to jot down and uh, basically tap into how you're feeling, and mostly how you're feeling before, but then also how you're feeling after. So really to just end the practice with a way of um, observation and putting that observation on paper. For those of you that are coming in on TikTok Live, we are on our Zoom class right now for Breathwork 101. So welcome in. If you're here, you can pop on in and hang out, sit back, and relax and breathe with us for today. So one of the resources that I mentioned to you guys was the Breath Initiative journal. And so this particular journal is kind of the flow of how we're going to be moving through these breath classes for the next couple of weeks. So we're going to be doing 8 classes here together. So that's going to be 8 Sundays. And basically every Sunday we will introduce a new breath practice. There will be a couple of Sundays that we don't introduce a new practice, but rather we'll continue to sort of move through the ones that we've already learned. And so um, here in week 1, we can see that we are on the breath awareness. So typically in the journal, it's going to tell you a little bit about the breathing technique that we will be using, why it's important, basically how it's used. And then we have the sections where you can write about it, check in, track it, and everything else. So if you are interested in getting a breath initiative journal, you can do that. The link is on Amazon. It is available here in our Discord. So all you have to do is click on that. It'll take you right to it. You can order your journal, and then that way you can kind of follow along in your breath journal. But if not, that is also fine. You can just have a regular spiral notebook, and this will be helpful for being able to sort of jot down whatever is going on in the body, and if you need to check in before whatever comes up for you during your breathing sessions, and then being able to check in after the fact. So um, does anybody have any questions or anything before we get started? So as we get started, for those of you who have never done a breathwork session before, that is perfectly fine. This is an intro to breathwork. There are many, many, many different forms of breathwork. There are many different teaching styles in how people facilitate their breathwork courses. My main reason and purpose for doing this, and for wanting to facilitate breath work for other people, is the fact of knowing that so many people are walking around dealing with traumas and anxieties and heavy stressors, and carrying grief, and especially Black women. And the biggest thing with that was just in research, it's shown that Black women outnumber other ethnicities and other races for the level of stresses that we carry societally, as well as financially, familially. And so I think that number one, that's a problem, but also we have this really great tool and this easily accessible tool, which is our breath. Right. It is a holistic tool. So I am a holistic wellness practitioner. I am a sensual movement instructor. That is what I do. I help women to get into their bodies, to learn how to drop out of the head and to drop into the body and to begin to feel and to know what it's like to feel in the body, which essentially raises our intuition. It helps us to gain clarities and make better decisions and know when it's a hell yes or a no simply by just being in the body. And so I came to breath because I experienced a really significant loss. My husband passed away, and that morning that I received that news, I remember my breath being very, very sporadic. If there's anything that I remember about that morning, it is quite specifically the fact that I could barely get out words to the people that I was trying to communicate what had happened to because I couldn't breathe. I couldn't catch my breath. And I notice a lot that when people experience a significant loss, or, there's that feeling of having the wind knocked out of you almost when we have these traumas, or when certain experiences arise in our lives, that can really take your breath away. That, and 9 months after my husband passed away, my best friend of over 25 years passed away as well. That was my girl. Um, and she had a long 9-year battle with cancer, and I was able to be there basically at her bedside when she passed away. And that was really, really difficult to watch, but I was able to witness her take her very last breaths. So our breath is so sacred in that it is literally our life force energy. It is the spirit of life that comes in at our very first moment. Of birth, and we are animated and we come alive. It is with that breath of life that we come alive. And so we each have an allotted number of breaths that we are going to take here in this lifetime. And we take about 20,000 of those every day. And so one of the things that became really important to me was just that if we have this allotment of breaths, how we breathe, what we do with the breaths in between our first breath and our last breath is really important. There are many studies, and we have another book recommendation, which was Breath, uh, by James Nestor. And that goes into a lot of some of the scientific backings on breath and the importance of breath. But breath is directly connected to how our body and our system functions. It is directly connected to our nervous system, but also breathing is the very act of living. And so when we are breathing in oxygen, that oxygen is then transported into every cell of our body. So our breath keeps our organs functioning, which keeps us alive. So this is down to a cellular level. The average person is only breathing at 20% of their breath capacity. We are only using 20% of our lungs. And what happens when we are experiencing stress, high stress, chronic stress, when we're experiencing trauma, when we're experiencing depression or anxieties or things that cause the fight flight response in our nervous system to be activated, we have body language. And that body language is really significant because how our bodies respond to things is also important. As someone who teaches movement and teaches people how to get into their body, our body's response and that body language is like, it can almost speak louder than words, because somebody can say anything, but it's also written in the body language, right? It becomes evident in the body language. And so when we are sad, when we are depressed, when we are maybe even anxious, when we are frustrated, like, we have a tendency to start to constrict. We concave, right? Things come in. Depression causes the shoulders to hunch. Sadness makes us hang our head. And so essentially all of this closes in the chest and closes in the rib cavity and the lung capacity. So we're not even in a position of posture to be able to fully breathe and fully expand into our lungs. Most of the time, our diaphragms are weak. So we're not doing these full belly breaths that are fully exercising the diaphragm. but rather we have these short, constricted breaths that are only reaching the chest. For some of us, they're only coming into the neck and into the collarbone. They're not even reaching the chest. Sure as hell aren't reaching down to the diaphragm. And so, what this breathwork class just aims to do is to simply hold a container and a safe space for us to be able to come and sit, to put everything else that's going on in life and in the world and in our bodies and in our minds on the back burner for just a few minutes, to be able to start to tap in and check in with the breath. If the quote and the statement is true that the quality of your breath is equal to the quality of your life, then here we're looking at, how am I breathing? What is the quality of my breath? And even to prescribe a breath technique, right? If I'm going to tell you personally, hey, I think that the best breath technique for you might be an alternate nostril breath, today, or, maybe in the circumstances that you're facing, you might need to do some deep belly breathing every day or some oceanic breathing every day, right? Because there's all these different types of breath that we can do, and each of the different breaths uh, activates different things within our body. But in order to even know that, like, it's important to know what is going on with the breath already. How are we breathing? What is your normal pattern of breath? What is your resting pattern of breath? So, for those of you that have been in our Discord, we had that first assignment, and all the assignment was for you to sit down, set a timer for 1 minute, and just count how many breaths you took in that 1 minute. And so a lot of you posted in and you put in your breaths. And so um, we had a lot of you put in your breaths. We had 17 breaths a minute, 15 breaths a minute, 15, 16, 20, 17, 14, 12, 15, 20, 16, 15. And so on average, most of the time, we should be breathing about 11 to 17 breaths a minute. And 17 breaths a minute is going to be on the high side. And so if we're breathing over 20 breaths per minute while resting on a regular basis, you're in a state of mild hyperventilation. This is that breath that we talk about that is unstable. This is that kind of breath that is not distributing full oxygen to the body as it should. And so that's okay, but becoming aware of it is probably the most important thing in all of it, because once we have an awareness of something, what is the saying goes, once when you know better, you do better, right? So even just bringing this awareness into the breath, now we can say, okay, now that I know how I'm breathing, now what can I actively do to start to slow that breath down? Breath work is not a quick fix. It is a practice. And so there are times where you may need to come back to this. You may need to come back to it over and over and over again. One of the things that I want you to understand that we're going to leave with today is the fact that 3 breaths has the potential to change your state. 3. So before we round out and we end our actual practice portion of the breath session today, I want you to really keep that in mind. And that is a little medicine that you can keep in your back pocket for any time, for any place, is that anytime you feel yourself starting to get a rise, right? Anxious, frustrated, angry, all right? All of those emotional spaces that cause our breath rate to increase or cause our blood pressure to rise, right? You would say that, like, oh, you make my blood pressure high. To just know that we can take 3 deep breaths, and it just takes 3 to begin to activate a different energy space. And sometimes it might take 6, and maybe for you, it might take 9. But knowing that it's always there in and of the breath. So holistically, our breath is a very potent medicine that has the capacity to bring a lot of benefit to not just the physical body, but the mental, emotional body, as well as the spiritual body. Okay. Um, so we're gonna jump in with some breath awareness today. And we're gonna spend about 10 to 15 minutes in the breath awareness space. I'm going to show you what it is to do a body scan, how to check in with your body and then your breath. And then this is something that I want you to carry into your week this week. So if tomorrow, maybe first thing in the morning, or maybe before you go to bed, or potentially if you need to do it in the middle of the day, right? If you find like something might be giving you a rise, tomorrow's Monday, some people tend to hate Mondays. So just checking in with that. But I want you to get familiar with checking in with the breath. Get familiar with sitting with yourself and taking just a few minutes. And if you have 10 to 15 minutes a day, I encourage you to take that 10 to 15 minutes a day. But if it's only 3 deep breaths, if it's only 5 minutes that you can give, then do that. And so, because today is Sunday, before we jump into our breath, I do just want to mention and bring up the fact that so for me, Sundays are like self-care day. Now I am an astrologer, an astrology consultant, and one thing about Sundays is Sundays are the sun's day. Sundays are ruled by the sun, and so Sundays are a really active day. They're a high energy day to actually be productive and get things done. However, in our society and in the way that we work, most people work a work week that is Monday to Friday, meaning that Sunday becomes that resting day before we move into Mondays, which is our moon day. Which means that Monday should actually be a little more nurturing and a little more soft and a little more fluid and flexible and intuitive rather than being like a day that we grind. So we kind of have it out of whack. However, Sundays are a really great day if you can. And when I say if you can, I mean when you can make time, because if we left it to ourselves, nobody has time to do anything, right? Everybody's so fucking busy, so I don't have time for self-care. But self-care is one of those things that you make time for. You make time for it, because if you wait until you have the time, you may never have the time. But caring for yourself is one of the most important things that you can do. When we talk about the breath is the easiest thing that you can do. You don't have to remember to take a pill every day. You don't have to remember to, go to an appointment all the time. With your breath, it is right there, easily accessible to you every day. So it becomes about discipline, right? Starting to get into a disciplined routine of checking in with that breath, but giving that care to yourself on Sundays. So if you consider your Sundays as the day that you would take your medicine, then we can spend at least 5 to 10 minutes breathing consciously and intentionally on Sundays. So we talk about the breath, we breathe every single day, right? And so the biggest thing becomes, what is so spectacular about I breathe every day? Your breath and your ability to breathe is one of the only systems in the body that is unconscious, but that we also have conscious control over. And so the fastest way to change your emotional state is to go to your breath, consciously and intentionally breathing. And as we slow down the breath, we in turn slow down the heart rate. We in turn slow down the blood pressure. We in turn, right? Everything starts to become more restful. Maybe you've ever noticed, or how many of you guys that are here, I see some of you like are shaking your heads like this. So, how many of you have been in a position where like something really pissed you off? Like you were mad, right? Um, and it was like you need to just calm down, like just calm down. And so as you start to calm down, you start to breathe and everything starts to settle. And as you feel better, you have a different type of clarity. Mhm. Exactly. You have it's like there becomes this different type of clarity. So the breath is the fastest way to change states, emotional states. And that's powerful. That's very powerful. If you don't remember anything else today, the breath is the fastest way to change your emotional state. Okay? So for today, you are welcome to sit up. You can also lie down. And I apologize. I'm so sorry that I sound like so crunchy today, you guys. Like, I'm doing my best here. Hey, everybody. I'm like live on TikTok too right now. So um, hopefully next week we'll have more people join us in the Zoom. Okay. But you can get a nice, comfortable position wherever you are. So you're welcome to lie down. Lying down is one of the easiest ways to be able to observe where you're breathing from. Where am I breathing from? Is my breath causing the rise to begin in my chest? Is the rise beginning out of my shoulders? Is the rise beginning out of my mid belly from the low belly? And so if you're going to lie down, you want to lay down flat on your back. And you don't want your head propped up too high on any pillows or anything like that. You want to try to be laying as flat as possible. You can put one pillow under your head, but don't like prop yourself up all weird. You can get a little more comfortable and make sure your spine is flat. You can put some pillows underneath your knees to pad the area to get a little more flat in your back. And then you can take the palms here and we want to feel into the breath. So the reason we would bring our hands to the heart or to the belly, to the chest, and to the center is so that we can feel into the breath and that we can feel and gain an awareness about where that breath is stemming from, where that breath is pulling from. So you'd bring your hands to the belly, just underneath your belly button right here. You can bring one hand above the belly button and one hand below it. That's also fine too. And if you're sitting up, that's also fine. You can sit today. And I would encourage you to make sure that you're just sitting up nice and tall. We want to find integrity in the spine. So we really want to lengthen through the spine when we get ready to do our breath. This is going to open up our chest cavity and really allow for full expansion of the lungs. And also it helps the flow of chi to move fluidly up and down the body. And so you may find that sometimes it's hard to breathe. You may find that your belly feels tight. You may find that you're struggling to pull in air. You may find, oh, this is easy as hell. You may find like this feels a little bit difficult. Everything right now is simply going to be about observation. And then we can begin to start to tap into the why this feels this way, or what is causing these restrictions, or what is blocking the flow of my breath. Okay, so if you're sitting, you're welcome to bring a hand to the heart and a hand to the belly. And that way you can begin to feel into the breath. Or you can simply just sit with your palms rested in your hands. And we typically will bring the palms down if we are grounding, and we will have palms facing up if we are receiving. And in this instance, as it is Sunday, we want to receive all of the good and positive energy of the day. I'm going to have you go ahead and place your palms face up. And so I see some of you are laying down. So for you guys that are laying down, you also can get a blanket and put it over you. Many different sensations can come up during your breath work. And a lot of times these sensations are very normal. So don't panic. We don't want to get afraid or have any fear. We essentially want to learn to observe the discomfort or the new sensation and then breathe our way through it. And a lot of times what happens is that discomfort or those sensations, it feels like a lack of control. And that can be a little bit scary. Right? So you can get a blanket. Sometimes you might get cold. Sometimes you might get a little chills or shivers. And that's okay. If you want to put an eye mask or a towel or something over your face to block out any light, you can do that as well. You don't actually need to look over at me and see me. You can just be directly under the sound of my voice. So a towel or a mask over the eyes is also something that you can pull in for today. And I just want you to go ahead and start to settle into this position that you are in for now. And I don't want you to begin to change anything. We're not looking to manipulate anything. We are simply just coming into a place of breath awareness. We are simply just observing. And I want you to think about how you feel right now in this moment before we even get started with our observation. Is anything going on in life? What might be some of your stressors? What is holding on to you right now? What are you potentially uh, storing? Where do you feel areas of tension or stress in the body? And you can stretch out the neck before we get ready to settle in. As you get comfortable, maybe lean your head from side to side. And again, we're just observing into some of the spaces of the body that hold stress and store tension. And as you get comfortable and begin to get the fidgets out, and that will happen, if your mind starts to kind of wander off and you start thinking about other stuff, or you're like, this shit feels stupid or whatever, that is also fine too. Simply observe those thoughts, but don't entertain them. Okay. Don't harbor, don't hold on. Just let things come up, but bring your focus and your attention and your awareness back to the breath. And so, as you bring that attention to the breath now, and as we get started, we want to just check in with the head. So, we'll do a body scan, checking in with the top of the head. How is our head? How are our thoughts? What's going on in our minds? Do we feel clear? Do we feel clouded or cluttered? Checking in with the areas that hold tension. We tend to store a lot of tension here between the eyebrows. So you may notice that when you get frustrated or when something is a little off, we tend to wrinkle and furrow the brow right here in the center. So if your brow is furrowed or if you are scrunching in the center, I invite you to go ahead and simply just relax the forehead, loosen up the forehead. Oftentimes when we're holding our breath, when we're stressed, we're holding that tension here in the jaw. And we tend to have our jaw nice and clenched. And so I want you to just observe here in the jaw, if we're clenching in the neck right here, if it's tight, to go ahead and maybe just part your lips just a tiny bit and allow the jaw to relax. And we'll bring that awareness down into the neck and into the shoulders, another area that tends to hold a lot of stress. There's a saying, like, I feel like the weight of the world is on my shoulders. This is energetic storage. These are stressors. This is emotions that have not been able to move out of the body when you feel that tightness and that tension. And so we're just observing, are we feeling any of that in the neck and in the shoulders? And we'll bring that awareness down into the heart. How is our heart? Always checking in with the heart. Bringing that awareness down into the upper belly, into the gut, into the upper back. Moving that awareness down into the lower back. And again, just observing what is going on in the body. And for some of us, this is the first time that you have ever sat and brought this attention and this awareness to specific parts of the body. If you're a yogi or a body worker or anything like that, then maybe you know what it's like to sit and hone in on these specific areas and parts of the body. Will bring that awareness down into the hips, into the tailbone, into the pubic bone, into the yoni, the womb. We bring that awareness all the way down. As women, we bring that awareness all the way down. We bring that awareness down into the legs, the calves. And last but not least, we check in with the feet, the soles of the feet, the toes, Even our feet can store some tension and some stress. Maybe wiggle the toes a little bit. You might get a little pops or stretches. And so now that we've checked in with the body, we've done a little observation, we have an idea of what's going on and how we're feeling in the body. I want you to bring your attention to your breath. And I don't want you to change anything about the way that you're breathing right now at all. I just want you to bring your attention to your breath. During the body scan, were you breathing through your nose or were you breathing through your mouth? Do you find that your inhale is short and shallow, or is the inhale long and deep? Do you find that in one breath, the inhale might be really long, and then in another breath, the inhale might be kind of short and shallow? So we're just observing. You don't have to change anything. We're just observing. And as you continue to observe that breath, I want you to pay attention to where that breath is coming from. So are we having a rise in the chest first? Are we breathing from the chest? Are we breathing from the belly? Does your belly move and blow up and out like a balloon every time you inhale? And does the belly fall and suction in as you exhale? So we're just checking. Where is our breath coming from? Are we breathing in the shoulders? Maybe our breath is so shallow. Maybe our breath is so tight today that it's not even reaching beyond the shoulder points, that it's not even coming deep enough in. And so we're simply just observing. And you may begin to notice that as you're checking in and as you're paying attention and as you're observing this normal pattern and this normal flow of your breath, that it's probably already started to soften or to mellow out, or for better words, to regulate. Maybe it's started to slow down, or maybe it's become more rhythmic, or maybe you're beginning to notice a pattern. And you don't have to manipulate it if nothing is happening. That is also fine. We're not changing what's happening with the breath. I just want you paying attention. How are you breathing? And then we'll pay attention to the temperature of the breath. Because on a day-to-day basis, I'm sure you're not fully noticing the temperature of the breath. But maybe as you take your next inhale, you notice that the air as it pulls in through your nose feels nice and cool. And you follow that breath all the way in as it comes in through the nostrils, and maybe you follow it all the way down into the lungs. And you bring that awareness up and try to feel the breath move through the lungs. You might notice that your exhalation is a lot warmer than the inhale. Sometimes that exhalation is hot. And I can see as you're breathing, I can see your belly rise and fall. Very good. And so I invite you at this point to take that breath and see if you can deepen it just a little bit from wherever it's at. So now we're going to do a little breath manipulation. So still observing. We're observing everything as a whole as we're breathing. But we'll try to deepen that inhale just a little bit and see if we can push that inhale into the belly. So as you take your inhale, expand the belly out. And then as you exhale, allow the belly to fall. 70% of our body's detoxification process is happening through the exhalation. So you want to make sure that you're taking full exhales. Okay. Empty the air. Empty the belly. And so for just another moment, I'm going to allow you to simply just breathe and observe. And I'm not going to talk. But continue to observe all of those things. Beautiful. And so I want to invite you to change up this breath just a little bit. And if the pace of your breath changes, that is also fine too. Again, we are just observing, simply just being in the body and simply just being in the breath. But I invite you to breathe in through your mouth this time, and then breathe out through your mouth. So for some of you, this might be a little bit complicated or it might be a little bit awkward. And what this does is just shakes it up a little bit. Consistent mouth breathing is not good for us. But on occasion, mouth breathing helps us to take in more oxygen. It also breaks up the level of control over the breath. You know, when you're a nostril nasal breather, we're always breathing in through the nose. So as we shift it up a little bit, we shake it up and then we pay attention. So I invite you to breathe in. So you may notice the air as it comes in. It may feel a little tingly or itchy on the back of your throat. If at any point you need to get some water, feel free to take a drink. We're just observing. And we want to not really place a hold in between our inhale and the exhale and before we take that next breath in. So we want to try to maintain a steady flow. And one good way to think of that breath flowing would be like the waves of the ocean, right? If you think about the sounds of the ocean as the waves come in, they go out, They come back in. There's no really long pauses in between that natural ebb and flow of the water. And so we want to create the space to where we're not taking pauses and we have a consistent ebb and flow of air. Inhale, exhale. Breathe in, breathe out. And once again, just taking that awareness. What are the sensations that you might feel? Sometimes you might feel a little lightheaded. Sometimes you might feel like you need to catch your breath. Sometimes you might get cold. For those of you that are on TikTok, if you are in the chat and you're breathing with us, maybe put in the chat how you feel, what sensations are coming up for you. And when you're ready, we can switch back to a nasal breath, a regular nostril breathing. And I invite you to allow your breath to begin to come back into its own natural and normal rhythm. So we can stop deepening the breath. We no longer have to manipulate the breath here. But now, once again, we're just taking stock of what that normal pattern of breath is like. What is happening with the breath and to the breath and in the body as we begin to settle back into a normal rhythm. Good. You don't have to get up yet. You don't have to get up yet. If you're laying down, I continue to lay. We're almost done. Good, goddess. I'm glad you feel good. And sometimes like this is all it takes. Now, breath work we can do for an hour, we can do for 20 minutes, we can do for 30 minutes, you can do for 45 minutes. And obviously the biggest benefit is going to come in the longer lengths of time that you are practicing. You'll get the biggest breakthroughs after practicing for a long time. After moving a lot of the stuck and stagnant and stored energy through the body. But even just to take this 20 minutes that we've had to just simply focus on yourself, to give yourself a minute to pull that oxygen in intentionally, to focus and to clear out the gunk and the shit from the week. Now imagine you do it every day, right? You clear out the shit from the day. You start your day feeling good and high off life. And maybe somewhere in the middle of the day or at the end of the day, you're like, I need to breathe. Breath is on a cellular level. It's a physical level. The act of breathing, it's a very physical thing. But the more you come and the more you sit and the more you get into your breath and practicing slow, deep breathing, the more you start to change inside, the more you're able to clear out what's holding on, the more you're able to free up, the more fluid that air, that breath, that life force energy is able to flow through your body. The more clear your thoughts become, the better your decisions become. The more ease you feel. And so even if these are just for a few moments at a time throughout your day, throughout your week, it's better than having to pop a pill. And I'm not saying go off your blood pressure medication or your heart medication or your anxiety medication or anything like that. But I want you to begin to gain an understanding that holistically speaking, this breath is also a really potent medicine. And this breath that you have that is free, that lives in you, that is a gift, that is your life force, that is a gift. That's going to be here with you all the way until you release that final exhale. That it's healing, that it's a healing tool. Everybody's healing from something. So I invite you to go ahead and begin to wiggle your toes. If you're laying down, you can kind of shake the legs out a little bit. If you're sitting, you may want to jiggle the legs. Wake up the shoulders. You may want to inhale. Take the shoulders up toward the ears, roll them back and down. Stretching the neck out. Now that we've oxygenated the cells in the body, we may want to just stretch it out, roll it out, move it out. One more time, inhale, loop those shoulders up toward the ears, roll them back and down, exhale. So when you are ready, nice and slowly, very slowly, okay? You don't want to move very quickly, but at your pace and very slowly, go ahead and begin to sit up. If you're lying down, you can turn over onto your left side, use the right palm and press your body up. And when you've come back into a seated position, I invite you to go ahead and grab your journals. Some of you might have your breath initiative journal, or maybe you just have a blank notebook for today. And so if you're in the breath initiative, we are in week 1, and I want you to go ahead and fill in your body scan page. And so just checking over the body, when we did our check-in and our body scan, when we checked in with the top of the head, we want to just observe. So you can just mark in here if there were any areas of tension that you may have felt in the body, just mark it there. And then we'll want to come to the aftercare. Okay, so our page for aftercare. Now that you've spent a few minutes breathing consciously, this is a good time to check in and reflect on how you feel compared to your initial check-in. What sensations do you notice in your body now? And what is your current state? Really take a moment to settle in to what the breathing has done for you today. And so I see on TikTok in the chat, we have some people that said they needed this. They feel really good. So you guys can kind of put into the chat here how you feel now. And then you just be sure to write down your post-session feeling. And so I actually feel energized after that. So, excuse me. You can write down energized and then write about your experience. So I invite you to take the next few minutes, maybe we'll do the next 5 minutes. We're almost done. To just simply write about the session and how you're feeling, what that brought up for you. Maybe this is your first time ever doing breath awareness, or your first time ever like putting that kind of focus or attention onto your breath. Maybe this is the first time you've ever put that much focus or attention onto your breath for any specific length of time. And so we can just take a minute to jot down and observe what that was like. Hi, Trip. I know a lot of you are saying, so we have in the chat over here that you feel calm, You feel relaxed? You feel energized too? Good. Because sometimes even the deep breathing, as you start to break up some of those energetic blockages within the body, you do begin to feel energized because you're clearing out a lot of the gunk, right? And when I say gunk, I'm speaking about the experiences in our lives and the things that we go through and the stuff that stresses us out that we have no outlet for, that essentially begins to rest in the body, in the physical body. The body keeps the score. And so we hold that stuff. Maybe last week some shit went down and you haven't really had any time to process it because you're busy. And so when we don't process these things, these stressors and these emotions that happen, they store energetically in our bodies, our emotions, our energy in motion, but they need to be in motion in order to make their way out of the body. And so if we're not moving, right, if we're not running, if we're not dancing, if we're not stretching, if we're not doing anything to physically move this out of the body, it can store. And those stored feelings and those stored emotions feel like tension. They feel like knots. You ever go get a massage? They're like, you're really tight. It feels like constriction in the body. And so our breath fully oxygenates and it fully allows the cells to function. And so it allows us to release that constriction. Grief. Grief in traditional Chinese medicine is associated with the lungs. When we grieve, it's hard to breathe. When we're sad, it's hard to breathe. So as you get ready to close and conclude your entry for today, just if you have any questions for me, you can put those in the chat now. Yeah, if you have any questions, you can put those questions in the chat. I'd be happy to answer anything that I can for you. If anybody wants to share. So when you guys are done, if you'd like, hop over onto Discord and let me know how your session went today. The replay for this video will be available in our Discord on Tuesday. So if you missed the live, you can catch it again on Tuesday in the link will be in the Discord. And so as you're getting up, you're welcome. You're very welcome. You are very, very welcome. For those of you that might be on TikTok in the live, you're also welcome to share your experience or any sensations, maybe how you feel. Was this your first time ever doing a breath awareness or putting that focus attention into your breath? On TikTok, if you have any questions, you can type those in right now too, and I can answer that the best I can. I'm going to end our live Zoom over here. And so just a reminder, the Zoom lives will be on Sundays. If you're interested in practicing face-to-face, where I can see and observe and we can be kind of in the same room. We are live on Zoom. Also, a reminder, I am having a Breathe in Love, self-love breath session on Saturday, February 15th. So I will have some information for that in the Discord, and I'll probably post a video on TikTok about it. So if that's something you're interested in, if you're on TikTok, you can DM me, or I'll be putting that video up for those of you guys that are here in the Zoom that are a part of the Breathwork 101 Discord. I'll drop the link and put that information in there. So I want to thank everybody for popping on. Thank you guys that came to take the time out to focus on your breath this morning, that took the time out to give yourself a little self-care and a little love. Happy Sunday for those of you that might be watching the game later. If you're a football family, if it gets rowdy, remember to come back to your breath. I invite you to come back to this breath awareness every day this week. And I will be checking in with you guys in the Discord and on TikTok. So come back to this breath, come back to it as many times as you need to. Next Sunday, I will be introducing a new breath technique. And so I hope to see you here for that. Yes. So it is okay. It is okay. And for me, I have, my nose is congested too a lot. So my littles seem to have given me their germs. So yeah. You still want to try to attempt to make that breath through the nose as best as you can. I know it can be a little bit more difficult when you're congested in your nasal and then you're trying to mouth breathe. So if at any point that feels uncomfortable for you, always, 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 we are listening to our own body first and foremost. We're always listening to our own body. I don't for me, the counting is not as important as you gathering your own rhythm, right? So if we're on a box breath and we're in for 4, holding for 4, out for 4, and holding for 4, if 4 is too intense or if 4 is not giving you enough air, then I always want you to adjust to your comfort. 100%, because it is about learning to listen to what your body is saying. And so the last thing that I want to leave you guys with, if you want to fill in your journals any further, or really just a question to sort of keep in mind, is simply just to just ask and check in. What does my body want to say to me in this moment? What is my body saying to me in this moment? And then just sit in your breath and observe, what is my body saying to me right now in this moment? This is also a good time as you close out this practice today to ask your body, ask yourself, what is it that I need? What do I need to nurture myself today? What do I need to nurture myself today? And maybe today for you, that's good food. Maybe that's living food. Maybe that's kombucha instead of coffee. Maybe today that feels like you need a nice bath, a soak in a tub. Maybe today for you, that means you need more water. Okay, so see if you can listen, see if you can hear what is the first thing that comes up when you ask yourself that question. And that's going to be it. So if there's no more questions for me, I will see you guys next Sunday for our next breath session. And other than that, I will catch you guys over in the Discord. So you guys have a wonderful rest of your Sunday, and I'll see you later.